Hello and welcome back to the Military Time. In this special hypothetical analysis, we explore a scenario shaking the global balance of power. Moscow in flames after a surprising Ukrainian strike, unfolding at the very moment former U.S. President Donald Trump intensifies his push for a fast-track peace deal in the region. What happens when diplomatic pressure, military escalation, and political theater collide at the world stage? Let's break down how such a dramatic series of events could unfold, what it would mean for Ukraine, Russia, NATO, and the global community, and how this shockwave might redefine the war entirely. In this scenario, reports first emerge in the early hours of the morning, multiple fireballs rising over Russia's capital, dense smoke blanketing key districts of Moscow, emergency sirens echoing through the streets, and Russian state television scrambling to maintain calm. According to initial information, a wave of long-range strike systems, origin unclear but believed to be Ukrainian, penetrates Russian airspace more deeply than ever before. These blasts hit strategic industrial sites, fuel depots, and communication nodes linked to military operations. But what makes this hypothetical episode explosive is the timing. It happens just as Donald Trump has been pressuring both Kyiv and Moscow to accept a rapid peace framework. This sudden escalation instantly raises global questions. Is Ukraine demonstrating leverage before negotiations? Is Russia losing its grip on defending its own capital? And how does the United States respond when diplomacy clashes with battlefield realities? In this imagined scenario, Russian authorities impose immediate flight restrictions over Moscow, grounding hundreds of aircraft and directing civilian traffic into metro shelters. Social media in Russia floods with videos showing flames lighting up the sky near major energy facilities, with residents reporting shockwave tremors across several districts. Panic spreads as the government struggles to craft a narrative. Was this a drone swarm, a long-range missile, or a domestic sabotage operation? Analysts work overtime to determine whether Ukraine employed new long-range systems or adapted Western technology, often a red line Moscow has warned about repeatedly. Meanwhile, in this scenario, Ukrainian officials remain deliberately vague. No official claim, no denial. But a senior advisor posts a cryptic message online: war does not stop at the border of those who start it. This single sentence becomes the center of global debate. Was this strike a message, a warning, a calculated escalation to force Russia into negotiations from a weaker position? At the same time, Trump's push for immediate peace becomes a storyline of its own. In this hypothetical unfolding, he announces that the conflict must end within days, not months, and that both sides should agree to a ceasefire blueprint drafted behind closed doors. However, the dramatic strike on Moscow turns the political landscape upside down. European leaders privately express concern. If Ukraine escalates now, does it strengthen its hand or risk isolation? NATO officials caution that any real-world attack on Moscow could trigger dangerous retaliation, even if Ukraine's objective is to pressure Russia into disengagement. In this scenario, Russian leadership convenes an emergency session at the Kremlin bunker, projecting confidence while visibly shaken. State media accuses the West of enabling the strike, calling it an act of strategic terrorism. Military analysts inside Russia debate whether a counterstrike is necessary to maintain domestic confidence. The Ministry of Defense vows that those responsible will face consequences, but its messaging appears fractured, raising speculation about the Kremlin's internal stress. Now, what makes this situation even more dramatic is the technological element. In this hypothetical, early analysis suggests the strike used a combination of low-altitude, radar-evading drones, potentially launched from inside Russian territory, along with long-range assets, capable of bypassing Russia's layered air defense network. If true, this would represent the deepest Ukrainian penetration into Russian airspace yet, and potentially the largest intelligence failure Moscow has suffered since the war began. As the fires burn across Moscow, global markets react instantly. Energy prices spike, European stocks dip, and analysts warn that if the conflict expands further, the economic fallout could rival major historical crises. Diplomats scramble to contain the political shockwave, urging restraint from both sides before retaliation spirals into a broader conflict. In this scenario, President Zelensky addresses the world briefly, emphasizing Ukraine's right to defend itself and stating that peace cannot be built on fear or surrender. He avoids referencing the strike directly, but stresses that negotiations must be based on justice, sovereignty, and secure borders, not external pressure. To Kiev's supporters, it's a message of defiance. To skeptics, it's a warning that Ukraine will not be forced into premature compromise. Meanwhile, Trump's team issues statements arguing that the strike, whether Ukraine conducted it or not, proves the urgent need for a peace settlement. But critics counter that pressuring Ukraine at this moment could embolden Moscow or fracture the Western coalition supporting Kiev. Political commentators debate whether Trump's approach is strategic diplomacy or a hasty attempt to produce a headline-grabbing agreement. As the hours pass in this scenario, satellite imagery shows emergency teams battling flames at multiple sites around Moscow. Independent analysts confirm that at least 2 of the targeted facilities appear to be fuel storage sites supporting Russia's military logistics. Striking these targets would theoretically weaken Russia's ability to sustain long-term operations in Ukraine, adding a military rationale behind what appears to be a politically timed attack. Russian military bloggers, notorious for their loud criticism of the Kremlin, erupt in outrage. How did Ukraine reach Moscow? How did Russia's billion-dollar air defenses fail again? And most importantly, what happens next? This internal pressure becomes one of the most dangerous variables. Historically, when authoritarian systems face humiliation, they respond aggressively. In this hypothetical scenario, the Kremlin hints at asymmetric retaliation. But military experts warn that escalation could backfire, stretching Russia's already stressed forces even further. The world holds its breath as intelligence agencies monitor troop movements, missile units, and air alerts across both countries. Diplomats quietly fear that one miscalculation, one misunderstood radar signature, one misinterpreted launch, could ignite a chain reaction impossible to stop. As the day progresses, global reaction flows in. China calls for restraint. The EU calls it a critical moment that requires wisdom, not revenge. Britain states that Ukraine has the right to defend itself while stopping short of endorsing the strike. The international divide is clear, and tensions rise with every hour. By evening, the political question becomes unavoidable. Is this strike the beginning of the end or the start of a far more dangerous phase of the war? If Ukraine intended to send a message before negotiations, it succeeded. If Russia intended to shield its capital from the consequences of the conflict, that illusion is shattered. And Trump's push for peace, whether sincere, strategic, or self-serving, has now entered a storm he may not be able to navigate. In this scenario, commentators highlight an uncomfortable truth. Wars do not end when politicians demand peace. They end when both sides either run out of options or reach a mutually acceptable equilibrium. Tonight, neither side looks ready to yield. As fires in Moscow slowly fade, the world asks, what comes next? Another strike, retaliation, diplomacy, or a dangerous mixture of all three? In this hypothetical analysis, the escalation reminds us just how fragile the balance is, how quickly the conflict could expand beyond its current borders, and how vital responsible leadership becomes when emotions, politics, and power collide. Thank you for watching this special extended report. This has been Military Time, bringing you deep, analytical, scenario-based breakdowns to better understand the realities and the risks of global conflict today. Stay safe, stay aware, and we'll see you in the next report.